All right, welcome everyone to Monday, April the 4th, our regular work session board meeting. I call this meeting to order. Mr. Bertram, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mrs. Shiver.
Here.
Ms. Mulligan.
Here.
Dr. Urso.
Here.
And Ms. Novak asked to be excused this evening.
All right, thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, any questions, comments before voting on it? If there are none, Mr. Bertram.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mrs. Shiver.
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan.
Yes.
Dr. Urso.
Yes. Brings us to tonight's consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
In a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, highlights for tonight's consent agenda? Just a comment. I noticed that cheerleading camp at Miami, that's an exciting thing for our young people. It's exciting to see them back out of our community doing the same things elsewhere.
I'd just like to mention on the substitute employee salary schedule that we added custodians for a part-time position on that schedule. That's the only change.
Super. I'll pause a second, make sure there's no questions. All right, then Mr. Bertram.
Mrs. Shiver.
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan.
Yes.
Dr. Urso.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Under athletics, there are two contracts up for our approval. The first being a BSN Sports Reward Program. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second, please.
Second.
Prior to voting, could we just have a refresher on this piece, please?
Sure. So our athletic director, Mr. Faust, has been working with BSN Sports, and this is a contract, a 3-year contract, with the option to negotiate at the end of 2 years. So basically, this is a contract that's going to dress our athletes with all of the sports and their apparel, their shoes, with a discounted rate. So we'll be going with Under Armour when we work with BSN. And going with the Under Armour, that comes with a 40% discount, many perks for our athletes and our families, $12,000 every year in apparel for our athletes, rebates that will be coming back to the school, so that's additional dollars going into our athletic department and running of those sports. Also, let's see. The second contract that you're going to see on the agenda tonight from Varsity Brands Impact is basically a partner with BSN Sports and with the Impact contract, which is the second contract listed tonight. That's where you're going to see some additional perks for moving with BSN and purchasing our apparel through BSN. Perks similar to $5,000 to help with branding, $30,000 to help with facility branding, and then also $15,000 for our athletic department for empowerment videos. Also, the beauty of this contract with BSN is that we still have the ability to shop other vendors. So if we found other apparel that would be somewhat where we would think would be more economical, we would take that back to BSN and then offer that and give them the opportunity to beat that price or match it. But we still have the ability to step outside of that BSN contract to dress our athletes.
That program that you were talking about, the empowerment program, since I'm not involved in the sports at all, can you explain that a little bit to me? Like, is that something that's run by Mr. Faust or the
No,
coaches?
that's working with Varsity Brands Impact, with that organization. That's a character building, motivational video series. Also, it's the opportunity to bring speakers in to actually work with our athletes.
So that kind of fits into that social-emotional learning
It does, all that
component.
SEL work, yes.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Bertram, do you anticipate this would be a cost savings in regards to what we're currently spending?
Certainly hope so. We've run both contracts through our legal, made modifications necessary to ensure that we do have the ability, as Debbie mentioned, to go ahead and put quotes out there if we so think we need to do quotes at any time. And Also, it allowed us to shorten one of the contracts from 5 years to 3 years with a renewal option at the end of the 3 years. So certainly think it is a great thing. One of the things on BSN, we'll also be getting rebates on sales, not just for what we're purchasing as a district, but what's being purchased through the district by our fans.
Online
and
sales, yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
And Mr. Faust was excited because he said Under Armour makes their items in the United States, and
United
so we're
States,
not
right.
contingent on any
That's
kind of
correct.
supply issues and employing our
Great
American
company.
workers.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sounds good.
We're ready.
We're ready?
Mhm.
All right.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
All right, the second contract is with Varsity Brands Impact Program. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Any further clarification from what was already said?
No.
All right, then Mr. Bertram.
Okay. Catching up. Dr. Urso?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Takes us to curriculum and innovation and an MOU with West Ed. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Again, could we have some clarification regarding this?
So West Ed is the implementation company that's going to actually come in and do the study behind our PRISMS work and the virtual reality in our high school. So we're currently participating with the PRISMS program in Algebra 1 in 2 of our classrooms. This is actually the organization that's going to come in and actually look at the data, do the observations to justify the program.
And who hires
Prisms.
them?
I'm sorry?
Do we hire them, or does the company, the Prism Company?
It's through the PRISMS pilot
Okay.
project.
Okay, sounds good.
This is just the MOU for them to actually come into our classrooms and do that work.
Okay.
Any other questions? If there are none, then Mr. Bertram.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes. That brings us to our work session, and the topic this evening is a look at Aubrey platform. And so I'll turn it over to Ms. Hauser.
Yep. So we have a guest with us this evening, Chris Rose from Aubrey, who's played really the designer behind the Aubrey and bringing our strategic vision to life. So while Chris is getting all set up, I just wanted to provide a foundation for this evening's presentation by Mr. Rose. So, and sort of narrow it down and focus it in on what he's going to be sharing with you. So we've been talking about, through our strategic vision, how we're promising when our graduates walk across the stage in high school that they're going to be prepared for the workforce with our badges, right? And with our badge work, you see it displayed over there, and it's the main part of our strategic vision, right? So, and that badge work centers around the skills. And why are skills important? So our students that are graduating right now are going out into a workforce where the average career lifespan is 2.8. 2.8 years before they're actually step into one career, and almost 2.5 years later they're stepping into another career. But they're not going back to school, right? It's based upon the skills that they actually develop, the skills that are actually taking them from one career field into another career field. So it's working with our students to develop those skills. And we've also talked about in our strategic vision the commitment to assign each student a mentor, which Mr. Rose is going to talk to you a little bit about tonight, how that's going to look. Also show you within Aubrey how we're connecting students to mentors so that we can assure skill development all the way through the years. Now, with skill development, for our students and then the career workforce, transitioning, every 2.5 years. So also part of our work in the strategic vision is to actually build awareness into, and that's what you see, you've seen this graphic many times, into the different career fields. So not only are we're basically marrying the skills with what are the opportunities that our students have as we see them right now. Also, let me say, with our students, starting in elementary school, we really don't know what careers they're going to have exposure to when they graduate from high school. So that's where it falls upon us to develop the skills so that we basically prepare them to move within one career field to another career field. I like to use Chris as an example. Chris, in his short career path, has already been in 3 different careers. He started as a math teacher, which is one type of career field. He moved to IT, and now he's in software development. And Chris never went back to school. So he is building his career path off of the skills that he's developed. So really, Chris is going to show us tonight how this is coming alive. You know, we contracted with Aubrey last year to build this and help build that tool for all of our stakeholders to actually watch how it comes alive. So Chris, I'm just going to turn it right over to you. Yep.
Thank you all
Welcome,
for,
So you can share.
thank
Yep.
you all for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight, to share and show off what's been developed thus far. I really want to commend this school district for thinking into the future. I think the last time I presented, I was asked the question of what areas of innovation took place in this project, and I really think it's about, again, focusing on the whole child's success. When I started my career in 2011 as a teacher at Hamilton High School, it was preparing students for state testing. We know there's so much more now that we can incorporate into classroom and instruction to really look at the whole student. So just a quick, brief thing about Aubrey. We are a K-12 administration platform to support the whole child. And really what that means to us is connecting the entire learning community. And we're going to talk about how that really fits in with the work with, of course, Middletown. But to us, that means bringing in all stakeholders that can help impact and serve the child. Not just students, not just guidance counselors, not just administrators, but the families, the students themselves, and also community partners that can work with to ensure that the student is on a pathway for success. And so when Aubrey comes in, again, and the left side is really a lot of great things that schools are doing. We always like to say they're data rich, but sometimes action and information poor. And so what Aubrey really tries to do is bring every one of the stakeholders that serve the student into one spot. So like I said, all staff members, students, families, really critical to that student success, and community partners. Give them a single place to go to help monitor student success. Student success here is the work that we're doing with Passport to Tomorrow. So in Aubrey, we try to bring in all the information that's relevant. We're going to talk about how portfolios and artifacts are 50% essentially of the work for Passport to Tomorrow. And then also huge component is wellness, right, in the social-emotional learning aspect to that child. And so we like to bring in all that information and give the right information to the right individual that can help that student. So that might be a family member, that might be a mentor, that might be an administrator. Again, we don't want any student to be left behind, and we also want to expose all the areas they're doing well in, not just academics, right? And the areas that we can connect them with partners and mentors to help them in the areas that they might be struggling. So specifically around Passport to Tomorrow, this is a part that I think is amazing, that we have the opportunity as Aubrey to work with Middletown, because you've done a lot of the pre-work in understanding the badges and skills that are needed for to make a Passport to Tomorrow graduate. And so we looked at this framework, and quite frankly, I took the 50, 60-page strategic plan and read through it so many times. I think I had everything memorized, and said, okay, how do we take that plan that's the big, huge document, I'm sure you've all seen it, and make this come to life, right? Because this is great. When I first read this, I was like, wow, this is really great. How is that ever going to be possible to do, right? And so that's where I get really excited as an educator and then a developer, is to say, let me take this massive plan and let me break it down into its parts so that we build technology to better allow those connections to happen, right? It's not the technology that helps the student, but we can help make it possible, by making those connections with the technology. Right, and so what we did at Abre was really interviewed a lot of individuals, not just employees, right, of Middletown, but did various Zoom calls with families, various Zoom calls with partners, various meetings with students, and sat down and said, okay, tell me about this, what you understand about Passport to Tomorrow, and what are the key things that you would like to see that you would really gain value from. And then we sat down with our team, and this is a long process here, and basically said, okay, how do we make all of those pieces of feedback we got from all of those stakeholders and come up with a plan. And that plan was, as I'll share in a second, is in progress. We're about 60% complete of that plan right now. And that includes everything from drawing out what it should be, presenting it to the users again, to actually setting down and writing code in step 3. So we develop everything ourselves. We're not reliant on another vendor to say, well, you can't do that, or that doesn't. We build the technology, right? And we build the technology to the specifications that are needed for the project. And then finally, we're starting to test. We call it QA, quality assurance, to test to make sure that when we do roll this out to all of the students and their families, that it's going to work well and it's going to meet the needs. And then, of course, preparing for the launch with our group K through 5 in August. So I'm going to exit out of this and go into Abre. Middletown already has an environment set up because of student privacy and rules here. I'm going to actually show from a sample district that has fake students and fake information just for privacy purposes. But the key point here is you can see staff and student access is turned on, but in our sample environment, which I want to demo off of, family member and partner access can be enabled at any point in time. And so all staff, all students, all families, and all partners have equal access. Abre is available in over 60 languages, right? So, and it's also available on any internet-connected device, not just a slimmed-down version of that. If you have your phone, many families we see have their phones. They don't have a desktop access. They can actually add it to their phone, and it will auto-translate into their device's native language. So again, equitable access for as many families and users as we can. I'm going to go ahead and sign into our environment here. One of the things that specifically we are able to do is create a personalized approach to announcements and communications. So whether you're a family, a partner, a student, or a staff member of some sort, you're going to get a personalized feed. And so you can see I'm a staff member here, I'm a parent down here, a family member, and I'm also a teacher over here. The information can be different depending on what's relevant to me. So as you're putting out communication around Passport to Tomorrow, or you're putting out materials to the community, that information is internal to all of your users and can be shared appropriately so that they're only seeing what applies to them, right? I always make the analogy, I have a first grader at Lakota. I don't want to see high school information if I have a first grader enrolled. So personalizing that announcement and communication that's relevant to the families and users. I'm going to actually skip to a key part just for time's sake. We call this the Student 360. This is around that whole child approach. This is where Abre really started with, and we're continuing to add on to this with a partnership with Middletown. So again, as I mentioned, academics are important, right? We have grades, we have assignments in here in which a family member can see. They can see down to the level of how the student's doing. They can see things like the assessments that the student is taking. They have easy access to that given that that information is made available to them through the proper consents and rights. They don't have to go to multiple spots to see their student's pathway to success. And one of those pathways to success is through a newly added tab that we did roll out and we have now available because of this work called Wellness. So I think it's an amazing goal that every student in Middletown can be claimed, So what that means is that's that mentor, that advisor role. I remember when we sat down with the project and I was thinking, how in the world are we going to be able to say for sure that every student that's enrolled is going to be claimed by a mentor? Like, that just seems like an impossible task. Well, what we did is made it so that any staff member can actually click that one button. You can see I just claimed that student. And now we have a working history of every staff advisor, we call it, that has claimed that student. So if that student's in an advisory period, or they move to a different building or a different school, or they go and graduate to a different grade level, they can be reclaimed over their academic career, and it maintains the history of those staff advisors working towards a student on the Passport to Tomorrow success. You can also align a family advisor. Family advisor can be important. Again, it might not just be the primary parent contact, but it's an individual that is working with the student at home. And the reason why that's important is because we can put out regular, timely, research-backed surveys, not only to the staff advisor that's overseeing the student, but also to the student themselves and the family member. And so recommended 3 times a year that a survey is given. Those surveys, I'll show how easy it really is to access them. I'll go to this teacher account. They will receive a notification when it's time to receive it. They can also receive an email. But when they are asked to take a survey, it pops up just like this. And go back to that. And if it is a young student, it can actually read these questions aloud to them. And they are in a very simple language. So we're not, asking them, rate yourself on your self-awareness skills, right? We're asking them simple questions like, do you ask for help when it's needed? Right? And so they can rate themselves. This is the teacher survey, but we also have a survey available for the student and the family member themselves. Once those surveys are taken, every 24 hours we collect that data, and we partner with a group called SSIS CoLab that's done this research for about 50 years and are able to align those surveys to the SEL competencies. So the SEL core competencies, it's a national body of standards that is totally aligned to the student's emotional learning, and we can track the student's abilities in all of those competencies. And you can do that by, of course, the composite score or individual assessments by the type of user that's filled it out. Over time, you hope that the student, of course, is just like they're working towards the Passport to Tomorrow badges and skills, they're developing their competencies. And those competencies relate directly to the state of Ohio SEL standards. And so wellness is a key component of that. The other side of the coin, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions, is the careers work. As Deb mentioned, SEL is critical, that we are on top of how students are feeling social-emotionally, but we also built a way that, notice, all of the badges of Passport to Tomorrow are now directly in Abre. And not only are the badges directly in Abre, but all of the skills that the students are working towards. And those skills can be aligned to the Ohio SEL standards. So I can go in here and I can say, okay, a 3rd grade SEL standard, here are all of the standards, and notice that the Ohio standards are aligned to the same categories as CASEL competencies. So now we can align the Ohio SEL standards along to the badges and the skills of Passport to Tomorrow, and students are going to be able to see very shortly their progress on all of these badges and skills. So those SEL competencies will directly relate to the badges and skills, as well as the students can submit portfolio artifacts. So as students are working in their classes, I used to teach math, right? They're probably doing things in class that relate to all of those badges and skills. So no longer is it just going to have to be, okay, submit it for this math class, and then after they leave and graduate the math class, they lose that portfolio. These artifacts will accumulate over their academic career, right? And so what's happening behind the scenes is students submit artifacts, they are able to align them to those badges and skills that are defined by the student success of Passport to Tomorrow. So they can choose the badge, they can choose the skill that it aligns to, submit their portfolio artifact. This is one thing we heard very clearly from families. Wow, it would be great to see how my student has progressed throughout their time at Middletown. So we're able to show this in a timeline view of how that they're doing socio-emotionally, but also through the skills and the artifacts that they're submitting that are directly aligning with their career pathways. And if their career pathway changes, that's logged within the system. So we're continuing to show the journey as they start early and then progress to secondary of how their goals have changed and what artifacts and SEL competencies that have been developed. At the end of their time at Middletown, we hope that every student has every badge and every skill. And we've made it very transparent so that those mentors, the student themselves, the family members, any partners that are allowed to work with that student all see that scorecard, if you will, of their progress towards Passport to Tomorrow. So just to wrap up one last thing, so where we are, essentially this is what I'm held accountable to, which is the progress of Passport to Tomorrow. You can see in green here, we've kind of already done these things, and then the yellow is almost complete. It's in final testing. And so essentially, what we have left to do is the report building for both the students and the teachers or the mentors and the district administration to ensure that every student is on track for completion and success for Passport to Tomorrow. We always like to say be proactive instead of reactive if a student's falling off on those SEL competencies or the badges or skills, be able to connect the student with the right mentor to get them back on track. And then finally, I'm really excited about this piece, which is we heard pretty loud and clear, okay, the student graduates, now what? So we're able to take all of that content, they can take it with them, they can download it with them when they graduate, and they have all of their portfolio that they've been working towards, not just their senior year, but their entire Middletown career, or they can transition their account over to alumni account. And what that does is, of course, allows them to stay connected, and hopefully for us to help you reach out and say, okay, how did this Passport to Tomorrow certificate and these badges and skills equate to your success in your career pathway, and make sure that the success was actually delivered upon. Any questions?
How intuitive, like for the parent, the grandparent, the employer, will this be? And when you say it kind of communicates between a laptop to a cell phone, is it like an app that they would utilize, or is it just accessing it through the website? How, just on this technical stuff,
Good.
not content stuff,
Yeah.
but technically speaking, for people who are curious, like how will they use this?
Great question. So I don't want to get too technical because I can get really technical, but we'll keep it at. So basically, Abre uses what's called a progressive web app. And what that means is you actually don't have to download the app. You can click the link. Every district we have has a unique URL, and it actually prompts them to then add it to their phone. So everything that we do, we test on all of these mobile devices, or that's part of the QA process. But so I'll actually go back as a family member and show you that experience. So if I am logged out here, you would direct your families to the Middletown site. They would be able to access that on their phone or desktop. It automatically adjusts the size. If they are on a phone, it's going to prompt them to download it and add it to their home screen as an icon that shows up. It'll also, if they're interested, ask them if they want to be notified of changes via SMS, like a text message or an email, if something updates in the system. They would click family member, and then you're able to determine how you want to allow family members to sign in or sign up. I'll tell you, in the district that I was in, we saw a rapid high engagement from families by allowing them to sign in with Facebook. Because it was an account they already had and already used, and it was already connected to their phone. And so basically they just click this, they can choose whatever they want, they just need an email, right? That's all they have to have is an email. Once they sign in with the email, that doesn't automatically give them access to student information. They still have to be provided with a student access code as a one-time. That ensures that the information's not, of course, being shared with individuals that don't have access to that. But once they sign in, they can add that access code, and you can see, you can kind of, flip it with your finger or your phone, your mouse here that I'm doing, and then you have access to your students. I can go over here and click my students, and of course I've got a fake student here, Daisy added, but I can click on Daisy, and you can see, I think it's pretty intuitive. That's one of the things that Aubrey is really careful about, is making sure that it's very intuitive and they don't have to go through a lot of training to be able to access that information.
What is your participation rates, like in regards to other districts? How involved are people outside of the building in engaging with it? You said with Facebook, you don't need a concrete number, but I mean, are those rates pretty, like a vast majority of parents or employers or whoever are?
So overall, here's what we see, is if you look at, say, your learning management system or grade book, you might have in some schools like a 5 to 10% engagement rate from families, believe it or not. And when you add in Aubrey, where they're going to see more things such as enrollment or their students' progress toward Passport to Tomorrow, and you make it simple, that number can bump up to 50 to 60% of engagement. It really depends on the community, right? But I will say, if you make it easy and you make it accessible, you're going to drive those numbers up much higher.
Right, and we have spent, we've had numerous conversations. So you heard Chris talk about SEL competencies. You heard him say CASEL competencies. You heard him say research-based, right? So all of that is a lot, right? So we've had numerous conversations about how you build that into the background, so that what the parent sees and what the end user sees is a very simple dashboard that takes all of that research and builds a graphic around it. So Chris talked about the actual survey questions, right? So know that every survey question directly aligns through all of the research to every one of our skills. Our skills are directly aligned to all the SEL competencies and the state standards. So even, it sounds like quite a bit, but through like many conversations, it's been the importance of ease of use. Because if it's not easy to use and the end user isn't able to get on and see a simple dashboard, they won't do it. Right.
Okay, our strategic plan aims to see that every child gets the help he or she needs, and it's individualized, and that we're aware of a child who needs help, whatever kind of help. So we certainly have to hang our hat on the validity of these, how the questions, the SEL questions, align to a student's wellness in that area. So I guess we have plenty of research and previous use to attest to that.
Correct. And then also, Chris, as he was moving through, there was a very simple graph that he popped through, but that graph actually displays the SEL competencies and where a child actually is in that point in time. At this point in time, we're for sure going to administer these surveys 3 times a year, but we're talking about daily surveys also.
Okay.
They actually capture those skills.
And that can change in a child's career,
Right, at any
obviously.
point in time. Right. So
Now-
if you look up there, that's a very simple dashboard.
Okay. And then looking at we want children to graduate with the competencies, the badges, and be able to find their way in the world. So interested in knowing the portfolio, you said, is like 50% of the assessment of their competency. Who defines or who sets up what is an acceptable component of a portfolio. Is it Aubrey or is it the district?
Your district curriculum.
district.
And what is acceptable? I mean, first of all, what is allowed to be submitted? And secondly, how is it assessed? And what
Yeah.
level of achievement you have to show to say it's good enough to put in the portfolio?
Right, so we're currently working through that right now as we speak. You remember, we talked about hiring or having a staff member at each elementary building where they specialize in the portfolio and the
yeah.
artifacts that are actually dropped into that portfolio.
Okay.
So we're currently working on that as we speak
So there would
with
be,
Aubrey.
there would be rubrics for
Yes.
a portfolio submission as to is it good enough or is it allowed?
Correct. Or, is it going to be a video? Is it a writing? Is it a picture?
Right.
Right. So,
Well, it
many
sounds like-
different avenues that we could choose.
Sounds like we've got both ends of both parts of our aims covered here.
I just think that this is a part of of a parent's student that they really don't get to see otherwise. I mean, we provide a lot of information as a school district to children, but a lot of parents, it's a number on a test that's given to them. They don't know what's in the test. They're going to be able to see what's being asked, right?
I remember one of the conversations I had as a first-year teacher. I had a family member call up to me and said, "Mr. Rose, my son just got a C on a test. How in the world is he going to recover?" And I said, "You're looking at one class of 1 year of one test." I said, "What about all of this other stuff?" Right? And so, again, making it accessible and making it easy to understand by the family member, I think, is super critical. Of course, we want academic success as well, but having it across all of the metrics that can be shared and can be given to the family member, I just think makes it the aha moment, as we say, happen, because you get to see all of the other aspects to learning and growing.
Right. And through those graphs, you're going to actually also be able to see what your child's thinking, right? So, you really don't know what's inside their head each day as they walk out the door. Are they feeling confident? Are they not feeling confident? Is this a positive attitude day? It's not a positive attitude. And when they're actually working through those surveys, that's thinking about how you're feeling, right? So, we don't see that in our children, right? Unless you're having those discussions every night, but that's such a those are fluid skills. So this actually helps you. This is a tool to actually help you engage as a parent and educator, that actual fluidity of the SEL competencies.
And I think it's going to make the kids see what they should be doing. Like that one question that you showed up there, for instance, do you ask for help? I mean, a lot of kids, that doesn't even come into their mind that they should be doing that for themselves.
Right.
I think it's fascinating information.
Also, they may ask for help at home, but they don't ask for help at school. Right.
One other thing I'll add too is we're looking at this at the student level here, but this data can be rolled up at the building or the district level as well, right? So, and the way I see that is of course, if you see students struggling in a certain area, how can we allocate or provide resources to address those needs at a building or a district level?
Chris, does the analytics in this system, are we collecting the analytics necessary for administrators to know if the students are being, their mentors or their parents are engaging in the system?
Yes, so we have metrics as far as daily or weekly engagements from all 4 of the user types, right? Staff, students, families, and community partners that are working with students. You also have the metrics of how many assessments were filled out, how many families filled them out. For the model of looking at SEL competencies, you technically only need 2 out of the 3. You need a staff member or a student or a staff member and a family member, et cetera. But it's obviously recommended that you get all 3 stakeholders, so you can see how many stakeholders have filled them out, what's the engagement rates, and then back to your question specifically, you're able to see if any students are claimed, so that ideally, certain number of weeks into school, we're going to be able to say how many students were not claimed on this button here. So if I'm a family member here, so I can't claim them, But if that button was not clicked on any students, how can we connect them within the first few weeks or months of school to make sure every student is claimed, and you're not having a student out there that's been unclaimed by a mentor working with them?
Does a student know he's been claimed, and by whom?
Yes.
You said before, like assessments like MAP or the state test, or for our high school students, ACT or AP tests or grades themselves, do those, I guess ACT, using that as an example, or ODE, are the documents derived, does
Yeah.
Aubrey, how does that all work?
That's a
How does
great
that all
question. It's a great
communicate?
question. So let me first say, whatever information you want to make available is the
can put
information
in
that's
there.
presented here, right? To staff or students themselves or families. We tie in directly to the student information system, the progress book,
Progress
right?
book.
That
Yes.
Middletown already uses, and we tie into other agencies such as MAP. We have a partnership. So depending on where you store the data, if it's in the student information system, if it's in the grade book, if it's in MAP itself, what we try to do is streamline that as much as possible. You're not having to export and import it. It automatically feeds in through a data integration so that it's up to date and it's efficient to see the data. Because the last thing you want is a data dashboard that's not up to date or that has to be maintained, because then it becomes out of date.
And so those are sample charts, like for a student who over time took the MAP, they
Yep.
can see hopefully their progression in
So the
regards to
idea,
their
the
performance.
idea was, and this, by the way, is not specific to Middletown, but the idea that we sit down is we always think about, when I start my day in the morning, if I'm a family member, am I gonna know what a RIT score is? Probably not. But I'm gonna know if my student's reading and math is going up.
Up.
And so we design these reports to be understandable and actionable. That's the goal.
So Aubrey's building these graphs.
Yes.
Okay. See, the artifacts that you spoke of, is that as simple as somebody taking a picture of a document and then uploading that as a file?
Absolutely could be. Essentially, they have an area here, and if you are on a mobile phone, you can actually choose this picture icon and take a picture. You can add it as an image, or maybe they're working on a Google Doc, they can add in a Google file because students use Google. Maybe they're working on a research paper or a paper or something, they can easily upload and attach that. It really, I think, depends on the grade level of the student, right? So it's going to be obviously more visual, and maybe a picture of an in-class project if they're a younger student. We also allow in younger grades for the mentor to be able to add in attachments for the students, right? So as they're learning, how to use technology or devices, the mentor themselves can snap evidence of the portfolio and track that aligned to one of the badges and skills.
Do all the schools who use this include the SEL part?
No, however, I will say that, so let me go back here. So Aubrey does a lot of different things, but I will say that that is a very common ask right now. So we have what's called our student well-being solution. That's what wellness is inside. We didn't have that 8 months ago. So we had learning management, we had school management to track different items and community engagement. Student well-being is really a result of what we see that was not created because of the pandemic, but was emphasized, like more emphasis was put on it and making sure our students are healthy social emotionally. So we've started to bring that in. So many more districts are starting to adopt this solution in Aubrey, but not every district has it yet.
Within that SEL, like the surveys, I'm assuming that teachers are going to complete these, or
3 types: the teacher or the mentor, if that could be an advisory teacher, the family member themselves, if they can or will, and the student themselves.
okay. And so, in terms of like validity, objectivity, knowing,
Yeah, so Aubrey is not the expert on these surveys, to be clear. We have partnered with an organization out of Arizona. It's a university that has done a lot of the research of these surveys and aligned them to the Castle core competencies. It's also part of, if you've heard the phrase MTSS or a multi-tiered services of support. It is aligned to that. And so, like I said, there's a huge research paper, about 150 pages, that has been published along with SSIS, that has developed these surveys for all of those individuals that are making the alignment between survey results to SEL competencies. And so that research has been going on for a long, long time, way pre-Aubrey.
I've drilled you with a lot of questions. I
No.
appreciate the responses, and I'm excited by this. I think the answers align very well to just being able to be used and appreciated by students and parents and families. As a parent, it's nice to know what your students are doing for the 6-7 hours there, and knowing that they're growing within it, and have a source to be able to go to be able to tangibly see that, empirically see what kids are doing. Yeah, it's a valuable tool that will hopefully be able to fully capture its potential.
And how long have you been in this part of your career? This career, I should say. Your third career.
2.5 years.
So you're about ready to start another one, I guess.
No, I'm enjoying this work.
Good. Based on that, right?
What made you go into this?
I was telling the story at the pre-meeting. So both of my parents are lifelong educators. My mom worked in the same classroom at Hamilton for 35 years. My dad taught at Hamilton for 15. He had to leave teaching because Hamilton had a teacher strike, so they had to have income. And so he went into IT. So I developed a passion for computer programming. He went to Champion Paper to become a programmer. And then he went back and took an early retirement and went back to teaching. So I had done freelance development in coding prior to teaching, but I had a passion for education. So Aubrey really, for me, was a perfect blend that I never thought I would be able to do, to be honest, because it's pairing up development programming with helping students.
So you saw problems along those lines, you saw a need for this?
That's right.
From your own
The first
experience?
version of Aubrey was used with my students in my classroom. That was back in 2015.
Way
And
back
it
then,
was-
yeah.
it's grown since then, and I was saying we're about up to 70 school districts now. We serve about 350,000 students.
Amazing.
And if I may, Chris, part of his story that he didn't share with you that I thought was very cool was that his dad actually went back to teaching. When he retired, Chris took his classroom, both math teachers. I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
neat.
And I live 20 minutes down the road, so.
There.
There you go.
We know where you live.
Yeah, we can- Other questions?
No, this is fascinating to me. This is things that, 25 years ago, you could only dream of or imagine, what if? And we got it
And now
now.
here we are.
I know. It's exciting.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Chris. We
Yeah,
sure
thank you
appreciate
very much.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
to say, on a final note, it is exciting, where it's all coming together, and we're starting to see it, and we actually have a tool to actually monitor
Yeah.
and watch the growth of, and many of the components of the strategic
Yeah.
vision will be found in this tool.
Yeah.
So it's
Couldn't-
pretty exciting.
Couldn't do this without it. Couldn't do
No.
this without it,
No,
absolutely.
you have to have, when you have something that's as extensive as this, you have to have a tool to map it all out, so. And Aubrey's done a dynamite job being our partner. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah,
Thanks so
thank you
much for
very
coming
much.
out tonight.
It appears that we are at board reports, and so, Mr. Moore, anything to report this evening?
No reports tonight.
All right.
No reports.
No reports.
We're waiting for our board docs business, so that's, I guess,
Should be coming up here real quick.
coming in the future. Okay.
Policies.
You mean for our
For our
policy review?
revising the
Yeah.
policies, yeah.
It's only been a week, I don't have any report.
Nothing?
No.
Only one thing, I was at Lefferson tonight and all 4 fields were being used, middle school, JV softball, varsity softball, and varsity baseball. Absolutely no parking, but it was exciting to just see so many people outside enjoying the relatively nice day, and seeing people out having some fun.
Was pickleball up and going too?
I don't think so. Man, that would have been a mess, because I even think the church parking lot was pretty full over there too, so it was a busy place. It was good to see.
Only thing I have, I told you I didn't have anything, Debbie, but I'd like to say thank you for filling in for
Oh,
Marlon tonight.
you're
Debbie.
welcome.
You did a great job.
We are ramping up for May 23rd through the 27th. You know, with the many initiatives that we have coming through ESSER, right now we have 254 staff members signed up to attend PD during the week of May 23rd through the 27th. Also in the planning stages for next year, if you recall, we added an additional 2 days of professional development to the calendar, so we're starting to also plan for that. But celebration that we have 254 people signed up for PD May 23rd through the 27th.
That's
exciting.
If there is nothing else, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
We are adjourned. Have a good evening.
There we go.